Hello and welcome to the Outlier Marketer Show. I'm your host, Pravin Shekar, and it is my privilege to have one new guest per week to talk about various aspects of thinking, acting, being different. Just a minute while I have to sort out a few things here. There is a change in generational thinking process. From the research background, they earlier said every 5 years there's a generational thought change. Well, if you ask me, as a father of two teenage girls, I'll tell you it doesn't last that long at all. 3 years maybe tops, but there is quite a lot happening. What can we do as people, as parents, as entrepreneurs? How do we know what is happening? How do we get the change? How do we adapt and learn? It is something like continuing to run. And it is our privilege today to have a senior teenager, Neerja Singh, amidst our midst, who I'm going to ask a lot of questions. So can you in the question panel. A brief about Neerja: 3 generational books, a YouTube channel on Gen Next, a professional column on keeping pace with the young, a university gold medal in philosophy, life design program for teens, and a signature millennium mantra. What she hasn't told here in the introduction, but which I know, is she cycled from Delhi to Chandigarh, not on any of the fancy bikes, but in the old heavy cycle that is there. Neerja is invested in turning generational differences into dividends at work, at home. She is the senior teenager. She's a professional speaker with over 37 years of experience across these generations. She is also the current president of the Professional Speaking Association of India. And she's here to tell us more about what are these generational differences and how can you and I know and adapt and learn. So welcome, Neerja.
Thank you, Praveen. Thank you very much. And you put it, right on dot when you talked about learning and unlearning in this entire process of understanding generational differences. That is what we need to do today: unlearn, learn, and then relearn. So that is the basic premise of covering this gap between generations, Praveen. Thank you.
Neerja, I'm an outlier
Yes.
marketer. The minute I find some different, unique positioning, my antennae go up. Now, tell us more about this moniker of yours, SEENAGER.
Right. I started calling myself a teenager because I considered myself a millennial in spirit, with the benefit of hindsight. And I did this when I started studying, researching, and writing about the generation gap. And here I was with the shared experiences, lived experiences with my generation, and yet with the characteristics of the millennials. Like the millennials, I'm ambitious. Like them, I'm tech savvy. Like them, I suffer from a severe form of FOMO, fear of missing out. Praveen, I've not yet hit JOMO, joy of
Ah,
missing out. So I'm still on FOMO. And that's
right.
how I decided to call myself a teenager. That's the background to this moniker, Praveen.
Oh, brilliant. Because even for the first time we interacted a couple of years ago, the SEENAGER thing popped out, and that definitely is eye-catching, Neerja. So I guess you're already speaking significantly in the new gen lingo, which I'm yet to catch up on. But that leads me, can you give us some examples of these generational differences? You also consult, you coach, you have these programs, and I'd love to know, as for myself and for the audience as well, generational differences. What are these? How do they exemplify themselves?
Right, Praveen, I will answer that by asking you a question. Have you ever suffered a quarter life crisis? Have you?
Oh, yes.
Or you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you are also a millennial, a teenager like me. Many people of my generation have not experienced what they call a quarter life crisis. Then something called a millennial burnout. Again, it's a phrase and a term that my generation is unfamiliar with, because we were brought up to just keep marching like good soldiers, and emotions and feelings were not as significant. We, in fact, were taught to repress our emotions, not express ourselves too much. But this is a major difference between us and the next generation, because we are moving from a knowledge economy to what is called a feelings economy, because most of the things that humans are doing right now with artificial intelligence coming up, those are going to be done by computers. So what are humans going to do? And therefore, this talk of moving towards a feelings economy, that changes everything. Your reference points change. You're going to work backwards from different outcomes that you desire. And that is where this entire attempt and study of the generation gap, because today it is a defining parameter. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that generational Praveen is the only relevant diversity today. Everything else comes second and is close to non-existent today if you really sit down and pay attention.
Ah, feelings economy. I'm going to hold on to it and come back to you on that, Neerja. That's such a brilliant way to put it in. But I do not know if you've seen the movie The Intern. I love the
Yes,
movie.
yes.
And does that in a way address what you talk about generational diversity, Neerja?
It does, because there it's a reverse mentoring taking place. There, the values from two different generations, they are learning from each other, or they've gone beyond their differences and learned to leverage each other's strength in that movie, and how they make up for each other's, let's say, shortcomings, and how they're able to achieve what they set out to do. And that is what generational understanding today has to look like. And that is what my attempt is when I talk about generation gap and how to cover it, how to cross over. The idea is to interpret the two languages, to make people understand that this exists, especially in India, Praveen. There's a feeling that generation gap has always been there, and what's the big deal today? And here in our country, it's largely covert. It's not overt, because we our family structure is so strong. A lot of it goes unacknowledged openly in the pop culture, let's say, or in the media. And there's a belief that it's only limited to urban spaces. But that's not my contention. I know for a fact that it exists, and it is causing that disconnect today can be dangerous. It can cause, in some cases, mental stress, mental health issues, estrangement in families, and even loss of life. So yes, to answer your question, the movie in turn does is representative of what a fine teamwork could look like.
And it is so pertinent today because we have colleagues all over working from wherever, and if I do not understand the generational gap or divide or uh, the need, work becomes very stressful both ways. I'm 46.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if I have to talk to my daughters, I have to insta chat, and something that I had to learn on because that's their language, and I have to communicate with them. That's got to come in. But I want to come back to the word that you told, feelings economy. And as a marketer, isn't that what we are appealing to make positive change happen, to get that connect? I will have to connect to the feeling of the person I'm speaking to, which spans generations. So to me, it is never one single market, but can I extrapolate it to this generation? The sentence is used in derivation, but I'm using it more as, let's say, people born between 2000 to 2005. Is it right on my part or any marketer's part to club them together as one generation, or are there quite a lot of differences there, Neerja?
All right. So, Praveen, there are differences. For instance, the generation before me, let's say, they were defined by consumption. That's a value that moved them. Then the next generation came along, and for them, status became very important. Therefore, big cars, big houses, and jewelry and external display of power and wealth. Then along come millennials who are looking for experiences. So you see the difference, the values that move them and what they want to do with their lives. And now we have the Gen Z, 1995 onwards. This generation is being called the true generation, because
Oh,
for them, the truth, the generation that's looking for truth, because for them, what is important is their sense of identity. They're also being called the identity nomads. They're taking longer to decide what they are, who they are, and what they want to be. And therefore, you see them struggling with their gender, struggling with what they want to do with their lives. They are different from millennials. They value ethics far more. They will not buy, many of them will not buy. My daughter, my younger one, doesn't buy from Amazon. She goes physically to buy whatever she wants to buy because she believes Amazon ill treats their employees. It's her opinion, it's her research that tells us so. So generations are different, and every value they will hold. They will look for it, or it means something to them to varying degrees. So when you say, can you club them together? No, I don't think you can club them together. For example, for my generation, for your generation, for the generation after us, you clearly had in shops clothes posh, areas marked his and hers. But for Gen Z, they want the freedom. A girl wants the freedom to dress up like a boy. A boy wants freedom to paint his nails. They want a unisex clothes line. So that is what the marketer has to keep in mind, that their needs are different. The dolls you will design for them are different. The games that you will sell them are different. The courses of study that you will pitch to them are different. The jobs that they are preparing themselves for are different, because this generation has to prepare themselves to play a role in the economy of their future. And we can't be imposing our assumptions on them. So
Well,
that is what I feel about the market. Yes.
Thank you, Neerja, because there's so much for us to look at. And also, as an entrepreneur, as a colleague, there is a need for me to understand what I need to keep running from what you tell, Neerja, because if it's going to change every couple of years, I have to keep running, learn, unlearn, and then share that across with the rest of the team so that we get the work done. But the one thing that hit me right up in the face when we were recruiting the Gen Z is they are in your face and they have no problem talking about it. My generation, we could not talk back. We will have to be very subtle and polite. And I'm going to give you an example here of a person we were interviewing to handle our YouTube channels. So I finished my questioning and he started saying, you've written books, but I'm never going to read your books, Pravin. I said, why? Oh, it takes forever. If you have shorter videos, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of your books, I'll be happy to read, but I'm not going to. And I was surprised that this generation is coming and openly telling that in an interview, which, how do I put it? It was a breath of air. It is fresh, but it took a while for me to reconcile with it. And from what you were telling, Neerja, we will need to understand and reconcile faster to be in sync.
Absolutely, Praveen, because I've had my older one take on OYO on Twitter, go after companies, hammer and tong. And my husband and I have sat there shuddering in our boots and saying, no, you don't do this, you don't do this. We've had our girls go to the Shaheen Bagh and sit there in the middle of the night and cry to us that we are not using our influence to do anything for the young people who are being brutalized by the police. So yes, this generation is like that. They are, call them clickbitists. They are mocked that all they do is act on Twitter or the social handle, media handles and just click. But I don't think that's entirely true, because these are products of their times. And you're right. They are open about what they feel, what they see. They express themselves quite honestly, particularly the newest ones, Gen Z, because for them, ethics, it matters. Authenticity matters. No, and they're meters for bullshit. They sense, yes, the bullshit meter is very, very sensitive. So they will, what they will do is, I find that they tune you out, and they're not going to spend time on you. They are also very careful about getting value for their time, Praveen. So if this generation talks like that, so if they're going to spend half an hour with you, what value are they getting in that half an hour? Are they learning something? Are they adding anything to their knowledge? That's how they look at it. So in a way, it's transactional in nature. But I think that's the demand of the time, because technology and going digital has overturned everything. Whatever we knew in the past doesn't apply anymore. And that's how this generation is. And I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for mankind, all in all. No more hypocrisy, no more hiding behind masks. Sometimes it gets a bit too much in your face. That's where that intergenerational understanding and empathy, what I talk about, needs to come in.
Right. When I look at hiring some of the Gen Z folks, Neerja, they are very clear that they want to be a part of the gig economy. They want to freelance. They want to have the freedom of going wherever they want and do not want to be shackled by a 9 to 5. Is this the new norm? Is this something that we have to get used to as entrepreneurs, marketers, colleagues?
It is. It is. And remember that the kind of diet that they've been brought up on, the kind of entrepreneurial talk and examples that they're seeing around them, that's how they've grown up. They're growing up on stories of Jeff Bezos and Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg and all these people, the tech titans. And so there's a great entrepreneurial spirit, but also a great value that they put to work-life balance. So this generation probably may not want to pick up your phone after 6:30. They might want Saturday and Sunday completely to themselves, Pravin. I was doing a millennial workshop for managers in a company where one of the managers said that they had a particularly brilliant young person who they wanted to mentor other young people. And our generation would have been flattered to do that. We would have been kicked at having been picked for this responsibility. But this boy, he said, I don't want to give time to this because I need my time alone. I need to go into the mountains. I need to do the things that I want to do. So for them, what makes them happy, what lifts them, what makes them feel wholesome is very important. So yes, this generation is like that. And gig economy, because it gives them flexibility, it gives them freedom, as you just rightly pointed out, and it's here to stay. We as speakers talk about multiple sources of income. My children talk about how badly, Praveen, we have managed our finances. And they say, where is the passive income? Where are the investments? How could you have just been depending on a salary? And for the earlier generation, a secure salary job was everything. But this generation doesn't think so. Just as they don't like to own cars, they'd rather hire an Uber. And by the way, that brings me to this one particular thought that just jumped into my head for Gen Z. Gen Z, it's access. I was talking about consumption being important, status being important, experiences being important for millennials. For Gen Z, it is access to information, access to the subscription, what you call subscription economy of knowledge on newspapers or magazine, access to esports, because for them they have known nothing else. They don't remember a world without internet. They just jumped straight into it. So I think this is here to stay, and the employers will have to find ways to leverage this and start looking at its pluses, Praveen.
Neerja, you mentioned about a millennial workshop that you take. Could you share something, some more information about it?
Yes, Praveen. This is a workshop that I do with the HR managers, and they're typically in their 40s. They have their seniors also. What's happening is the seniors, a little older, they just shut their cabins and sit inside. They don't want to have to deal with the dresses that these young people come wearing to the offices, or the kind of demands they make on the company for the transport. Even that transport coming from home to work needs to be an experience. So if it's a transport with 4 people, 5 people packed into it, there are problems there. Or there are young people who are telling them that they're not a morning person. They're not a morning person. They don't mind staying up late at night working, but they cannot catch up to work at 9 o'clock. And this is happening particularly in the tech industry, because there the onboarding is much younger, in the sense that younger people join this particular industry. So this workshop is for that manager who's in the age range of about 45 years and is going into depression because he feels that he's not doing a good job of leading and motivating the millennials who work under him. So I met this young manager who at a particular workshop told me how he spent his nights watching Netflix series that his juniors were watching and discussing because he felt left out, and the only way he could establish a connection with them was to be familiar with the culture that they enjoy. So the millennial managing mantra, I call it the millennial managing mantra, and I offer it to companies where they are having trouble, they're losing out on productivity, the attrition rate is high, there is a dissatisfaction because the young people demanding to see the budget, they're demanding to see the minutes of the meeting, of board meeting sometimes, and they're threatening some of them. When they're dissatisfied, they go straight to Twitter, or they'll go straight to YouTube, or they'll go straight to some domain where they'll start airing their grievances. So these are the issues that that I address through this workshop, Pravin.
Neerja, my request, please don't stop with the HR department. There are CEOs and marketers in the 45 age group who your help, and I definitely am a part of that. So please, I would reach out to you outside this as well, because this is a serious issue, and India is a young country. We have a whole lot of people who are coming in.
Exactly. Even more so. Yes. Pravin.
How did you decide on this as a topic for your workshop, consulting and professional speaking, Neerja?
Well, I was completely blind to this area, Pravin, until 2013. And in 2013, what happened was there were these two personal incidents which threw me completely off balance. My husband retired from the Air Force, and in Barmer district in 2013, there was an air crash, a MiG-21 crashed, and the 25-year-old pilot was killed. And imagine the loss, the young potential life, and this national property, and the aircraft is also there, lost. But what shook me was the reason. The reason was social media addiction. Imagine. Here is a force which has not maybe anticipated it fast enough that this could happen with the young people, or they could be up at night on WhatsApp with their girlfriends or whatever, some friends, and then sleep deprivation leading to such a massive tragedy. This was one. And second incident in the same year, my elder daughter, who was studying at the law school then, again, completely unexpected. She's a state level boxer, highly accomplished young woman, but started going into a decline. And it was very difficult for us to understand why it was happening, because everybody says she has everything. So why is she depressed? That's a question that comes up. A lot of mental health issues you will see around you today. And people say, why are the young people, they have family support, they have enough money, they have opportunities, they have an Ivy League education. So what excuse do they have for going into a depression or any kind of a decline? Now, to understand what was happening, I started looking at pop culture. I started looking at the music they were consuming, the books they were reading, the messages they were getting. And again, Praveen, most of the content they consume is American. We Indians, and as parents and as a nationality, we haven't provided any alternative. We jumped onto this bandwagon of sending them to great schools because education mattered for us. I grew up watching Oprah Winfrey, and Oprah Winfrey used to say, education, education, education all the time. And here you are, trying to give them, focusing on their CV and making sure they go into the best schools. You know what Indian parents are, they will invest so heavily in their children. And then what happens is the children are getting mixed messages from the environment. So they're trying to fit into an Indian reference points, yet trying to acquire a global identity and trying to maintain their roots. So a lot of confusion and stress and a lot of new issues, Praveen, that we are unaware of. For instance, the gender identity, mental health issues, this thing about emotions being so big a deal. So that is when I started reading about it. I kept reading, and then started writing about it. And I said, this is a gap. More people need to know so that they're not caught off guard like I was caught off guard. I was caught completely off guard. I had my blinkers on, assumptions.
Writing, you mentioned about it. Tell us about your books.
Yes, my books are the newest one is on Gen Z. I decided to focus on Gen Z. What are the characteristics? What are the influences that are shaping them? What does the future look like? Because they are the ones that are defining our. Actually, they're dictating terms to everybody today. They are. So they literally are telling us what direction we need to take. If your child questions you on the climate, or on your, like I said, your investment choices, or your child tells you, why are you not constructing a bunker for the safety of the family, and how many people can fit into that bunker because the water is going to come and take over and it's not so far in the future. And that's how life has been, Praveen. Mankind's our history has been like that. Things steal up on us. We don't anticipate, many of us. And before you know it's happened, before you know the smartphone has happened, and before you know that epidermis, under the epidermis, you will have that chip where you'll be fiddling here. Yes, you don't even need the smartphone. The smartphone is projected to be obsolete very soon. So
Oh,
these things, exoskeleton, for example, suits that you can make, bodily suits, or different ways of transportation, loops, those hyperloops, in what are they called? I think they're called loops around the cities. We are
yes.
hearing, yes, we are hearing of smart cities. Not hearing, smart cities exist today. We keep debating on screen time panic and how screen time is not good for the young. But you're moving towards a future where there'll be screens all around you. And perhaps humans will just metamorphose, or something will happen to our bodies that we just stop being affected by it as much as we are getting affected today, because your physiology also changes depending upon the environment. So the books are, again, one book is on No Time to Be Young. There I've tried to say how basically explore all the different aspects over which generations uh, have, some kind of a tiff. So tattoos, for instance, or consumption. Now, consumption, the fact that marijuana is like soft drink today, it's like chewing gum. It's and and that people like me, if somebody said, I remember a gathering of young people at my home, and they were talking about getting some paper, and I called my buddy, my helper. I said, tell me, what chart paper do you want? He can quickly go and get it. I didn't know what paper they're talking about. So this is generation gap, isn't it? You don't know that red eyes means that the young person has been, well, busy, and that if your namkeen is disappearing from the house, teachers, school teachers, not knowing what the signs are, not knowing how to differentiate a cigarette from a joint, or not being familiar with something called vaping, which looks like a pen drive. Not being, this is, and these things are happening right under your noses. You cannot help, you cannot. I'm not talking about prohibition. No, I'm not talking about prohibition. I'm talking about education. If I know what it is, what the effects are, what the downside is, I can at least educate the child so that the child doesn't go overboard or is not exploited. For example, the quality of the marijuana that young people consume, and that it can come laced, and where are they buying from? Is it safe for them? All these things. So the books are to, again, like I said, to put together all this information, and hope that people will open their eyes, because I think we are delusional. We like to tell ourselves, not my child, not my child. But that's not true, Praveen. They are very, very connected, the children, and we could be surprised.
Well,
Yes.
right after the discussion, I'm going to shut everything through and binge on Netflix for the next 2.5 just to sink in.
And Reddit, go on Reddit also.
We've got a couple of questions there, but before that, one final question from my side, Neerja. I'm a book lover, you can see behind. And what is the one book that you love and would recommend to the audience?
Okay, the one book, and it's in the context of generation gap. There is a writer by the name of Dr. John Duffy, Duffy. He's written a book bringing up the new teen, in these times of anxiety. It's a long name, and don't be fooled by the word teens there. That book is applicable to the young, irrespective of whether they are millennials, Gen Z, Alpha, which is coming up, or go a little up to Gen X also, because it's a very, very thought through book, and a very original perspective. I was stunned, Praveen, when I read that book. And I've gone over it multiple times, and I've drawn upon it in major ways, because he talks a lot of sense, and he talks about how this generation needs mighty bosses, mighty parents, mighty teachers. This young generation needs us to be mighty. So our role is not over. We need to continue to be relevant and be really mighty, because they are trying to survive in a world that is much harsher than I grew up in, perhaps you and I grew up in.
Thank you, Neerja. For the viewers, you'll be wondering what's a marketer doing talking to a teenager. Well, all of us are marketers. There's so much more that we need to understand. Marketing is not snake oil sales, but to make positive change happen to the person who needs that change. And therefore, this is absolutely important for us to know, for me to know as a CEO, marketer, and a dad. And I have one question here from Swati Maya Neerja. I'm going to read the question. Can we see in another way that most of the young generation have seen their parents' journey, which in turn has taught them for this shortcut solution? I prefer carrying boxes to hotels and restaurants in order to get parcels to avoid plastic. So what's your view on this? Thank you, Swati Maya.
All right. So what I understand from Swati's question is that that the younger people are taking shortcuts.
No, they are going in prepared because they know what they want. She carries a box.
Okay.
So she
yes.
Parcels. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's true. And again, this is exactly what I was saying, that they're far more environmentally conscious, far more inclined towards social justice, and far more able to visualize the bigger picture than we used to be, because many of them are minimalists. They don't want to consume too much. They want, like I said, truth, their own identity and access for the younger generation, not so much consumption or status or any of those experiences that even the millennials went after. So this generation, the new generation, is like that. And I think kudos to them for this. I admire them for this this value that they live by. They live by this value.
Right. A comment from Divakar Puri. It's the millennials fire triangle, 3 sides that we must know. My interaction must be meaningful. 2, know that I'm an explorer. And 3, once you engage with me, I may need decisions quickly. So thank you. It's comments quite a lot coming in. There's a question from Manasa Pillai. She's an educationist. They say that schools will be the only organizations which we will go back to for on-site learning. NEP, National Education Policy 2020, shows focus on ECCE. I do not know what that is. What are your thoughts on that? Schools will be the only organization we will go back to, not offices, not somewhere else, but schools are, we're going to be bouncing back. What are your thoughts?
Mansa, my thoughts on that are that schools, in fact, in my opinion, are becoming irrelevant. And let me hasten to explain quickly. I've been a teacher. I work on social emotional learning. But what's happening is that online learning, so much is available, and the content that we are delivering in our schools is not relevant, is not applying. So when young people find that it's not working for them, and Coursera is available, Udemy is available, personal learning clouds are available, LinkedIn learning is available. There are a whole lot of these plethora of places you can go to for knowledge, and you can pick and choose. So self-directed learning, this is a thing that is homeschooling, for instance, unheard of for our generation, but you find more and more young people today who are teaching themselves. And I think schools, the brick and mortar schools, are on their way to becoming irrelevant. Let's see what happens, but that's what I believe.
On my front, Neerja, the connections I made in school, our generation was different, but the connections I made in school and college, touch would still linger along, and that the bonds are extremely strong. As they say, there is a question from Varun. The conversation that's going through is an eye-opener for people like us who are on the brink of getting burnouts. Can you please enlighten more about the midlife crisis and how to get rid of it?
I'll answer that, Pravin, but to quickly, you said something about the real connections. Let me tell you one thing. For this generation, the only real connection they feel is with nature and with animals. That's it. So even their friendships are less said, the better. So that's how it is. And they do feel more authentic online. Many of them feel more authentic online than they feel offline. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you about connection part. And about midlife crisis. Midlife crisis is, I don't think, at least I think that we don't have the luxury. It's maybe a insensitive way of putting it, but I don't believe we have the luxury of a midlife crisis. And the reason is that our children need us to be around for them far longer. They're taking longer to launch themselves. They're taking longer to be emotionally independent. They're taking longer to be economically independent. They're just taking longer. And even when they become independent, they're coming back. Sometimes for a second degree, or sometimes because they're not married and they don't have an anchor, or they're trying to work through a breakup. So these are experiences which are a little new, and they exhaust them. They really kind of put them in a vulnerable position. And of course, then a home is one sanctuary. So that luxury for a burnout, midlife crisis, I believe, doesn't exist. And even if it does, there are you'll find your way to work through it. So like I did, I studied, I continued dancing, I started learning new skills. Joined Spanish classes, I joined foxtrot and rock and roll classes. I started cycling. I knew only freestyle, I knew only the breaststroke in swimming. But just about a year ago, I taught myself the remaining three strokes. So now I can do butterfly also. My arms don't come out properly, but some kind of a butterfly I manage. I learned the freestyle. So my suggestion to anyone who feels they are in a midlife crisis is learn new things. Learn new things. Join some yes, learn.
Learn new things so that you and I can continue to be teenagers at heart and the way we are doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, Neerja, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you very much for poking holes in my mind balloon and the fact that I will need to learn so much more, starting with going and hugging my girls and also switching on the TV and trying to learn a little bit of the lingo, not to fake it, but to really see if there is a connection that can be established.
Connection is the most important. Absolutely.
Lovely. Yes, thank you, Neerja.
Thank you very much. A pleasure, Pravin. Thank you.